Long ago, before the world had written stories, on the banks of the Nile there were chiefs and kings, their names half remembered in fragments of pottery or scratched on old tomb walls. The very first, some say, was Narmer, also called Menes, the one who joined Upper and Lower Egypt into one kingdom. He wore the white crown of the south and the red crown of the north, symbols that would echo for thousands of years. Narmer was not alone. Before him came the shadowy rulers we barely know, like Scorpion and Ka and Irihor, their names like whispers in the sand. They ruled small lands and dreamed small dreams. But together they built the idea of Egypt. After Narmer came Horaha, said to be his son. He founded Memphis, the great city near the Nile Delta. Its walls were strong, its temples vast. And for centuries, pharaohs would return to it again and again. The early dynasties flow past us like water: Jer, Diet, Den, each one carving tiny steps forward. Den was called the one who strikes the Asiatic, a reminder that even at the dawn of time, Egypt's kings looked outward, guarding their land. We drift onward to Queen Mernith, one of the first women to hold the power of Pharaoh. She ruled as regent, her tomb as grand as any king. Her name, carefully carved, tells us Egypt could sometimes bow to a queen. And then came Anadjib, Samerkhet, Ka. They ruled the first dynasty. And then, slowly, the second began. The names continue: Hatshepsut, Raneb, Ninetcher. Kings whose deeds are misty but whose names survive, as if the Nile itself refused to forget them. By the third dynasty, something new rose on the horizon: the step pyramid of Djoser, built by his architect Imhotep, stone stacked into the heavens, the very first great monument of Egypt. Djoser's name is still spoken because of that pyramid. After him came Sekhemkhet, Sanakht, and then the mighty Sneferu of the fourth dynasty. Sneferu was restless. He built not one pyramid, but three: the bent pyramid, sloping oddly in the desert; the red pyramid, glowing in the sun. He gave Egypt the shape of the true pyramid, a triangle pointing to eternity. His son was Khufu, known to the Greeks as Cheops. He built the Great Pyramid at Giza, the last surviving wonder of the ancient world. Imagine it, 4,500 years ago. Workers hauling stone, priests chanting prayers, the desert shimmering in the heat, and at the center Khufu, a man who wanted a tomb big enough to touch the sky. After him came Jedefre, who built a pyramid at Abu Rawash, and then Khafre, whose pyramid still stands beside the Sphinx, silent guardian with a lion's body and a human face. Then Menkaure, whose smaller, gentler pyramid completes the trio at Giza: Khufu, Khafre, Menkaure. Father, son, grandson, a dynasty written in stone. But the line did not stop there. Shepseskaf, Userkaf, Sahura, Neferir Kare Kakai. Names like stepping stones in the river of time, each pharaoh adding one more temple, one more prayer, one more scar upon the desert. And so the story of Egypt, dynasty by dynasty, has begun. We drift now, deeper into the Old Kingdom, past the dazzling stone of Giza, into a time when kings turned their eyes to the sun. The fifth dynasty began with Userkaf. His pyramid, though smaller than Khufu's, still gleamed in the desert. But his true legacy was the worship of Ra, the sun god. Kings began to call themselves sons of Ra, and temples to the sun rose beside the pyramids. After him came Sahura. His fleet sailed to the land of Punt, bringing incense and treasures. His pyramid still stands at Abusir, weathered but proud. Neferkare Kakai followed. His pyramid complex shows us the first long causeway lined with reliefs, stories carved in stone of kingship and offerings. Then Neferefre and Shepseskare, rulers whose reigns were short but still carved their names into the long chain of pharaohs. Niusere Ini, perhaps the most powerful of this dynasty. He built sun temples and pyramid temples, his name surviving in ruins that glow golden at dusk. The fifth dynasty closed with Djedkare Isesi, and then Unas, whose pyramid texts are the oldest religious writings we know. Inside the pyramid of Unas, carved on the walls, are spells and prayers meant to guide the king's soul through the afterlife. Words that still whisper today. And so we pass into the sixth dynasty, beginning with Teti. His reign brought officials more power, a shift that would weaken the throne. Pepi I followed. He ruled for decades, marrying many wives, building many pyramids, scattering his mark across the land. Then came Merenre Nemtiem Saflis, and after him, Pepi II. Pepi II, the boy king, who sat on the throne at only 6 years old, and reigned, they say, for more than 90 years. The longest reign of any pharaoh. Imagine it, a child wearing the double crown, and then an old man outliving his children and grandchildren, watching Egypt grow weary around him. By the end of his reign, the old kingdom was fading. Governors of distant provinces grew strong. The Nile's floods grew weak. Famine spread. The center could no longer hold. After Pepi VII, kings like Merenre II and Queen Nitocris are remembered in fragments. Nitocris, perhaps a legend, perhaps real, said to be the first ruling queen of Egypt, who avenged her brother's death with a banquet of fire and water. And with her, the old kingdom came to an end. Egypt slipped into the first intermediate period, a time of division when local lords ruled their nomes like little kings. The pyramids stopped rising. The land grew quiet. Yet even here, the pharaohs were not forgotten. The line of kings remained unbroken, stretching like a thin reed through the marshes of time. The old kingdom had ended. The pyramids silent, the Nile low. Egypt had fallen into shadows. This time is called the First Intermediate Period, when governors, called nomarchs, ruled their districts like little kingdoms. Pharaohs in Memphis lost their grip, while rivals in Heracleopolis claimed the crown. And far to the south, in Thebes, another family rose quietly. We know some of their names. Kati of Heracleopolis, rulers whose deeds survive in scraps of text. But more powerful than them all was a man from Thebes, Mentuhotep II. Mentuhotep the Sane, the king who reunited Egypt. Around 2050 BC, after long years of struggle, he defeated his northern rivals and brought the two lands together once more. He built his great mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, terraces cut into the cliffs, a vision of eternity. The Middle Kingdom had begun. Before him came Intefas and Intefisaken, rulers of Thebes, laying the groundwork. Intef III carried the line forward, but it was Mentuhotep II who restored Egypt's soul. He was followed by Mentuhotep III, who sent expeditions to Punt, reviving trade across deserts and seas, and Mentuhotep IV, whose short reign ended mysteriously, perhaps overthrown by his vizier, Amenemhat. Amenemhat I founded the 12th dynasty, and with it, a golden age. He moved the capital north to a new city called Ichtawi. Its name means Caesar of the two lands. a fresh start for a weary kingdom. He built pyramids at Lisht. Though smaller than those of the Old Kingdom, they stood proud in the desert. His son, Senusret III, continued his work, erecting temples, statues, obelisks, reaching deep into Nubia to control the gold mines. Then came Amenemhat II, a ruler who kept Egypt stable, followed by Senusret II, who built a pyramid at Lahun, surrounded by fertile fields of the Fayum. Senusret III was one of the greatest kings of this age, stern, with deeply lined statues that show his humanity. He was a warrior, leading campaigns into Nubia, fortifying the borders with massive forts. He is remembered almost as a living god, a ruler whose face still gazes at us with heavy, weary eyes. His successor, Amenemhat III, built two great pyramids, one at Dashur, one at Hawara. The Hawara pyramid was called the Labyrinth by the Greeks, a vast complex of chambers that inspired legends. Amenemhat IV followed, his reign shorter, gentler, and then came Sobekneferu, another queen upon the throne. She ruled as pharaoh, wearing the crowns of Egypt, honoring the crocodile god Sobek. She was the last of the 12th dynasty. With her death, the Middle Kingdom began to fray. The 13th dynasty rose, a blur of short reigns and many names. Kings like Sobekhotep, Neferhotep, Wegab. They ruled for brief years, leaving behind scattered statues and forgotten pyramids. At the same time, the 14th dynasty ruled in the Delta. The land was divided again. The strength of the Middle Kingdom faded. But for a time, under Mentuhotep, Amenemhat, Senusret, Egypt had lived in peace and order. Temples shone, pyramids rose, fields flourished. The Middle Kingdom was remembered as an age of balance, a calm before the storm, and on the horizon, new kings were stirring, strangers who would soon come to power, the Hyksos. The Middle Kingdom had ended. The 12th dynasty faded, and the 13th stumbled with weak kings. Egypt grew divided again. In the north, the Delta fell into the hands of foreigners, the Hyksos. Their name means rulers of foreign lands. They brought with them new tools of war, the horse, the chariot, the composite bow. The Hyksos kings ruled from their city of Aras. Names like Seleucus, Kion, and Apophis echo faintly across time. They adopted the title of pharaoh, but their accents were foreign. Meanwhile, in the south, Egyptian kings still ruled from Thebes. The 17th dynasty struggled against the Hyksos, brave rulers like Sekenenre Tao, who fought and died in battle. His mummy still bears the terrible wounds of war, blows to the skull from Hyksos weapons. After him came Kamosi, bold, restless, launching campaigns against the Hyksos, weakening their grip. And then Ahmose, I, the founder of the 18th dynasty. Ahmose finished the fight, drove the Hyksos from the land, and reunited Egypt. His victory opened the door to a new era, the New Kingdom, the greatest age of the pharaohs. Ahmose restored temples, reopened quarries, and sent armies into Nubia. He was remembered as the deliverer, the one who freed Egypt from foreigners. His son, Amenhotep I, continued his work. His reign was peaceful, remembered with love. After his death, the people worshipped him as a god. Then came Thutmose I, a warrior king who pushed Egypt's borders far into Nubia and even into Syria. His obelisks rose in Karnak, tall, slender fingers of stone pointing to the heavens. His daughter was Hatshepsut, one of the most remarkable figures in Egyptian history. She ruled first as regent, then as pharaoh in her own right, wearing the false beard, standing tall as king. Hatshepsut built her splendid mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, terraces carved into the cliffs, like her ancestor Mentuhotep. She sent expeditions to Punt, bringing back incense trees, gold, and treasures. Under her reign, Egypt prospered in peace, but her nephew, Thutmose III, would become the warrior pharaoh. He ruled beside her, and after her death, he erased her name from monuments, perhaps in anger, perhaps to secure his legacy. Thutmose III campaigned again and again, 17 times into Canaan and Syria. He built an empire stretching from Nubia to the Euphrates. His victories were carved on temple walls, lists of conquered towns stretching endlessly. He was called the Napoleon of Egypt, but in truth, he was more than that, a king who expanded Egypt to its greatest reach. After him came Amenhotep II. Strong and athletic, a king said to have rowed a ship faster than 200 men. He too campaigned in Syria. His reign kept Egypt's empire strong. Thutmose IV followed. His dream stele still stands between the paws of the great Sphinx, telling how the god promised him the throne if he cleared the sand from the statue. And so he did. Then came Amenhotep III, whose reign was one of wealth and splendor. He built massive temples, colossal statues. The colossi of Memnon still stand, huge stone giants watching the rising sun. His court was full of luxury, diplomacy, and art. But after him, Egypt would change. His son was Amenhotep IV, better known as Akhenaten. Akhenaten turned Egypt upside down. He abandoned the old gods, worshipped only Aten, the sun disk. He built a new city at Amarna. His statues show him with strange features, almost otherworldly. He and his queen, Nefertiti, became the face of this strange revolution. But after his death, the old gods returned. A young boy came to the throne. His name was Tutankhaten, later changed to Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun reigned only briefly. He restored the temples, but died young, perhaps only 18 or 19. His tomb, discovered nearly intact in the Valley of the Kings, made him the most famous pharaoh of all, though in life he was only a minor king. After Tutankhamun's short reign, Egypt was left in fragile hands. I, his advisor, took the throne for a few years. His tomb lies in the Valley of the Kings, close to the boy he once guided. But I was old, and soon another general, Horemheb, claimed the crown. Horemheb had no royal blood, but he restored order. He erased the memory of the Amarna kings, carving over their names as if Akhenaten and his line had never existed. He restructured government, promoted loyal generals, and prepared Egypt for strength once more. With his death, the 18th dynasty ended, and the 19th began. The founder was Ramses I, once a general under Horemheb. He ruled only briefly, but passed the throne to his son, Seti III. Seti I was a builder and a warrior. His temple at Abydos still glows with finely carved reliefs, showing battles and offerings with delicate detail. He fought in Canaan and Syria, keeping Egypt's empire firm. Then came his son, one of the greatest names in history, Ramses II, known as Ramses the Great. Ramses II ruled for more than 60 years. His reign was filled with monuments, colossal statues with his proud face, temples carved into cliffs, like Abu Simbel, with 4 giant seated figures gazing over the Nile. He fought the famous Battle of Kadesh against the Hittites, a fierce clash of chariots and warriors. Though the battle ended in stalemate, Ramses proclaimed it as a great victory, carving scenes of his bravery on temple walls. In time, he signed one of the first known peace treaties in history with the Hittites, sealing it with marriage to a Hittite princess. Ramses had many wives, many children, perhaps over 100 sons and daughters. His family filled the palaces and temples. His reign brought stability, grandeur, and legend. But time is a patient hunter. After Ramses the Great, his successors could not hold the same power. Merneptah, his son, faced invasions from the Libyans and the mysterious sea peoples. His victory stela, now in Cairo, even contains the first known mention of a people called Israel. A tiny line in a long text, yet one that echoes through history. Then came Seti II, a weaker ruler, followed by a brief usurper, Amenmesse, and then Siptah, a boy king. His stepmother, Queen Tusret, eventually ruled as Pharaoh. She was among the last of the 19th dynasty. The 20th dynasty opened with Setnakht, who restored order after Tusret's fall. His son was Ramesses III, often called the last great pharaoh. Ramesses III fought back the sea peoples, a wave of invaders who threatened the whole eastern Mediterranean. His reliefs at Medinet Habu show ships locked in battle, archers firing, chaos on the waves. Egypt survived, but the strain was heavy. After him, the power of the pharaohs waned. Ramesses IV, V, and VI each ruled, leaving tombs in the Valley of the Kings. But resources were running dry. Tomb workers even went on strike, the first recorded labor strike in history, a sign that the system was breaking. Ramesses VII through Undine followed, each reign shorter, poorer, weaker. The glory of the new kingdom faded. Priests at Thebes grew stronger than kings. Tombs were robbed, temples decayed, and the land slipped toward division. By the time of Ramesses II, Egypt entered the third intermediate period. The age of empire was gone. The pharaohs of the new kingdom, from Horemheb to Ramesses the Great, had left behind their temples and tombs. But the Nile carried their memories onward. The new kingdom had faded. The temples still shone in the sun, but the throne was weaker. Priests in Thebes held power. Generals commanded more than kings. And so Egypt entered what we call the third intermediate period. The 21st dynasty began in Tanis, in the Delta. Kings like Smendes, Amenemnesu, and Susenes I. Their names may be less famous, but their tombs still held treasures. The silver coffin of Susenes, gleaming like moonlight, was found intact, showing that even in decline, Egypt still loved its kings. After them came Amenemope, Osorkon the Elder, and Siamun, pharaohs who ruled in a land where priests and princes often held more power than the throne. The 22nd dynasty brought Libyan chiefs to the crown. Shoshenq I, once a general, became king. He marched into Canaan, even raiding Jerusalem. His name carved faintly in the Bible as Shishak. His descendants ruled as well: Osorkon Firwen, Takalotwine, Osorkon II, kings whose statues still show Libyan features, yet wrapped in Egyptian tradition. They built temples, but their power was divided among many branches of family. The line continued: Shoshenq III, Shoshenq IV, Pami, Shoshenq V, and in the south, rival dynasties appeared: Takalot, Sen, Osorkon III, Shoshenq VI. Their reigns overlapped, sometimes friendly, sometimes fighting. Egypt was no longer united. The 24th dynasty in Sais was short-lived. Tefnakht and Bakenranef held brief power, until another force swept in from the south, the Nubians. From Kush, in the land of Nubia, came kings who claimed Egypt's throne. Poye marched north, defeating rivals, uniting the two lands once again. His victory stela still tells the story, proud and firm. So began the 25th dynasty, the Nubian Pharaohs. Shabaka ruled, building temples and reviving ancient traditions. Taharka followed, a mighty king mentioned even in the Bible. He fought the Assyrians, built temples at Karnak, and dreamed of reviving Egypt's glory. But the Assyrians were too strong. They swept into Egypt, driving the Nubians back south. Tutankhamun, last of the Kushite pharaohs, tried to reclaim Egypt, but his reign ended with retreat. His dreams faded into the sands of Nubia. The 26th dynasty rose in Sais, beginning with Psamtik of Bard. He reunited Egypt under native rule once more. His successors, Necho II, Psamtik II, Apries, and Amasis, ruled in a time of brief revival. They traded with Greece, hired Greek mercenaries, built new temples. Egypt stirred with life again. But the world had changed. The Persians came, led by Cambyses II. In 525 BC, they conquered Egypt, and the pharaohs of the 27th dynasty were Persian kings, Cambyses, Darius III, Xerxes. They wore the double crown, but ruled from far-off capitals. For a time, Egypt rebelled. In the 28th dynasty, Amyrtaeus ruled briefly as the only king. Then came the 29th, with Nepherites, Hakor, Samuthes, and another Nepherites. They fought, schemed, tried to hold independence. The 30th dynasty rose with Nectaneboth Bur, who built temples and fought invaders. Teos followed, then Nectanebo II, the last native Egyptian pharaoh. Nectanebo II ruled bravely, but the Persians returned, and Egypt fell again to the 31st dynasty, ruled by Artaxerxes III, Darius III, until Alexander the Great arrived and the Persians fled. The long chain of Egyptian dynasties, from Narmer to Nectanebo, had nearly ended, but one more chapter remained. Alexander's generals would found a new dynasty, the Ptolemies, Greek kings who wore the crowns of Egypt. When Alexander the Great came to Egypt in 332 BC, he was welcomed as a liberator. The Persians had ruled harshly, and the Egyptians were ready for change. Alexander marched to Memphis, and the priests crowned him as pharaoh. He founded a new city, Alexandria, on the shore of the Mediterranean, its streets wide and straight, its lighthouse destined to shine as one of the wonders of the world. But Alexander did not stay. He marched on to conquer Asia, leaving generals behind. When he died, his empire was divided, and Egypt fell to Ptolemy, one of his trusted companions. Ptolemy Seker Soter became the founder of the Ptolemaic dynasty. He declared himself pharaoh, blending Greek power with Egyptian tradition. He built the great library of Alexandria, a treasure of knowledge where scrolls from across the world were gathered. His son, Ptolemy II Philadelphus, expanded the city, supported scholars, and built the great lighthouse of Pharaohs, a tower so tall its fire could be seen for miles out to sea. The Ptolemies that followed carried both Greek and Egyptian names. Ptolemy the Euergetes, Ptolemy Phaethi Philopater, Ptolemy Epiphanes. Each ruled from Alexandria, yet appeared in temples dressed as pharaohs, speaking to both worlds. Ptolemy VI, Ptolemy VII, Ptolemy VIII, the names blur, generation after generation. Brothers and sisters, uncles and cousins married each other. Power was shared, fought over, taken back and forth. Queens also rose. Berenice of Arsinoe Sacchards, Cleopatra II, Cleopatra III. Their names echo among the kings, strong women who influenced the throne. The dynasty was long, filled with civil wars, alliances, betrayals, But through it all, Alexandria remained a beacon. Temples rose, ships traded, scholars studied under the shadow of the library. And then, at last, came Cleopatra VII, the most famous of them all. Cleopatra was not the first of her name, but she was the last of her line. She became queen at 18, ruling beside her younger brother. In time, she stood alone, wearing the double crown of Egypt, speaking not just Greek, but Egyptian. She was loved by her people for embracing their traditions. Cleopatra was clever, charismatic. She sailed the Nile on golden barges, ruled from marble palaces, spoke with philosophers and generals alike. She met Julius Caesar in Alexandria, a meeting that changed history. Legends say she had herself smuggled into the palace in a carpet, rolled out before him like a gift. Together, they became allies, lovers. She bore him a son, Caesarion. After Caesar's death, Cleopatra aligned with Mark Antony. Their love story, their alliance, has been told in countless plays and poems. Together they fought against Rome, but Octavian, later Augustus, was too strong. At the Battle of Actium, their fleet was defeated. Antony fell upon his sword. Cleopatra, seeing her end, chose death over chains. Tradition says she let an asp, a cobra, bite her, though some whisper it was poison. With Cleopatra's death in 30 BC and the death of her son Caesarion soon after, Egypt became a Roman province. The long line of pharaohs, stretching back 3,000 years, had ended. From Narmer to Cleopatra, from the first unifier to the last queen. More than 300 kings and queens had ruled the Nile, building temples, carving statues, raising pyramids, writing their names on stone. The Nile still flows, the temples still stand, but the crowns of Egypt were set aside. The age of pharaohs was gone, and so we have walked together through the long line of Egypt's rulers, from Narmer, the unifier, to Cleopatra, the last queen. More than 3,000 years of kings and queens, carved in stone, wrapped in linen, remembered in whispers. Dynasty after dynasty, the first and the second, little more than shadows now. Jer, Den, Renite, rulers whose names still flicker like candle flames. The Old Kingdom, where pyramids rose toward the sky. Sneferu, Khufu, Khafra, Menkaura, colossal tombs of stone that still stand in the desert silence. The 5th and 6th dynasties, Sahura, Nayusere, Unas, Pepi II, kings who wrote prayers on their walls, who reigned for lifetimes, until the Nile grew weary and the land fell quiet. The Middle Kingdom, reborn through Mentuhotep and the kings of the 11th and 12th dynasties, Amenemhat and Senusret. Amenemhat again. They built pyramids in Lisht, temples in Karnak, fortresses in Nubia, their names flowing like reeds in the breeze. Then the storm of the Second Intermediate Period, the Hyksos, foreign rulers with their horses and chariots, and the brave kings of Thebes who rose against them, Sekenenre, Kamose, and at last Ahmose, the liberator. The new kingdom came like dawn after night. Thutmose and Hatshepsut, Amenhotep and Akhenaten, Nefertiti with her long neck, Tutankhamun with his golden mask, Seti, Ramses the Great, Merneptah, Ramesses III, temples glowing, armies marching, Egypt stretching its hand across the world, and then decline. Priests growing strong, kings fading, Libyan pharaohs, Nubian pharaohs, Persian pharaohs, names like Shoshenq, Paye, Taharka, Nectanebo, each wearing the crowns, each holding the scepter, even as the land slipped from their grasp. And at last, the Greeks. Ptolemy and his line. Alexandria with its library and lighthouse, queens named Cleopatra, kings named Ptolemy, until the last. Cleopatra 7, radiant and doomed, her story tied to Rome. 3,000 years of stone and sand, of crowns and gods, of wars and prayers. Yet the Nile still flows. It flowed for Narmer. It flowed for Khufu. It flowed for Ramses. It flowed for Cleopatra. And it flows still today. The temples still rise from the desert. Karnak with its forest of columns. Luxor glowing in the evening sun. Abu Simbel with its giant guardians carved into the cliffs. The pyramids, silent and eternal, pointing to the heavens. Every pharaoh, whether mighty or forgotten, left some trace, a statue, a scarab, a name carved in hieroglyphs, each one part of the endless story of Egypt. And now, as we rest, we can imagine the long procession of kings and queens moving slowly along the Nile, Narmer at the front, Cleopatra at the end, hundreds in between, their crowns shining faintly in the dusk, the sound of oars dipping into water, the whisper of wind in papyrus reeds, the stars above glimmering over the desert. Egypt sleeps, and the pharaohs sleep with it. And so, may you too drift into rest, carried gently by the eternal river of time,